Doubt. Irony. That's what poisons your story. That and too much predictability. Chapter 3 and 4 were very unpredictable. Most people never would have guessed we'd come face to face with the Roaring Knight so early on, and especially not for Chapter 4's final boss to be a Titan. So I started to think, what's something that with all the information we currently have, we would believe to be impossible? Then it hit me. Ralsei growing a soul and becoming a lightner. Hello, I'm Azaridas, and this is part 2 to the Red Soul of Hope, Ralsei Soul Theory. If you haven't watched part 1 yet, you should do that, since I won't be explaining what I've already gone over in that video, and some of the knowledge is required to understand this one. This theory was supposed to be bigger, but I've had to cut some parts to get this out before Chapter 5 releases. However, I'll be going over those cut parts in a part 3. Also, there's barely any editing in this video due to time constraints, so listening to it in the background is probably perfect. Now, before I get into the theory, there's a few important things I have to say. I'm not perfect, I can and do forget things, and there may be bits of evidence / counter evidence I've not accounted for, forgotten, or not found. This theory had to be rushed out, so there probably will be some. In the case that I do get something wrong, or have forgotten to include a certain piece of evidence / counter evidence, I request that you kindly tell me in the comments. Now, we may begin. Before I get into why I believe Ralsei will grow a soul, we first have to understand what a soul is. The thing all lightners possess is determination, so I'll be starting here. What is determination? Determination is the power that allows souls to persist after death. Depending on the amount of determination someone has, the amount of time varies. In Undertale, Arthas extracts it from the human souls, meaning it is a physical substance. When injected into monsters, they begin to lose shape and melt. This is because the bodies of monsters don't have enough physical matter to take those concentrations of determination. Sound familiar? In Ralsei's speech about the nature of dark worlds at the beginning of Chapter 3, he says when things become dark, they become more indistinct, and in the background we can see the chair and poster begin to lose their shape. Beings of darkness are able to shapeshift, with the Roaring Knight being an example. The Amalgamates also obtain this power from the darkness, because determination is darkness. Creatures of darkness being determination also explains why their defenses are so high. Determination is the most resilient substance in universe. We already know that dreams and darkness are both related, and in the Asriel fight, when we choose the Dream Act, it fills our inventory with items called Last Dreams. Using a Last Dream deals 17 HP, with 17 being the number associated with darkness. But wait a second, through determination the dream became true. Isn't that like saying through darkness the darkness became true? It makes sense that the darkness would want to spread darkness, but this didn't feel right to me. Then I realised. Isn't the goal of your hopes to achieve your dreams? Using the Hope Act reduces the damage you take, and at the end of the Asriel fight, Asriel is unable to kill us because he isn't able to do enough damage. This is because our hope is so strong that we reduce the damage enough to survive. Is this also not a form of determination? We know Flabby was injected with determination, and when he recalls the feeling of death from when he was in control of the save points, he describes it as a burning feeling that made him not want to die. Undyne also talks about this burning feeling when talking about the hopes and dreams of everyone being as one before she transforms into Undyne the Undying. When you check her after her transformation, it says she was reformed by her own determination. Before Asriel breaks the barrier, he also describes everyone's hearts beating as one, describing it as everyone's determination. Flabby doesn't have a soul, but he still felt this burning feeling, meaning that you can feel it without a soul. The virtues of monster souls are hope, love, and compassion, and Flabby can't feel any of these. And finally, during the Gerson fight, Gerson says Susie has a story lit in her eyes, burning bright, burning black, burning up everything. All of this proves the existence of two types of determination: light determination and dark determination. Light determination is light itself and isn't a physical substance, whereas dark determination is physical and can directly be destroyed. Light is technically physical, but you can't destroy light unless you're some atomic superbeing. Determination is used as an umbrella term for both types. When Undertale and Deltarune use the word determination, it's basically saying hopes and dreams, but in a way that forms aura. This is huge because this means that souls are made of hopes and dreams, light and dark. And in an unused prophecy panel, it states the hopes and dreams that govern fate. This means that those with souls take fate into their own hands. And because darkness can't enter the light world, this means that they aren't in control of their fates. The true function of souls is to control your own fate. Creatures of darkness are made of only dark determination. So because of this, we know that darkness are made of both hopes and dreams. However, these hopes and dreams aren't their own, so they don't have souls. If darkness are made of hopes and dreams, then that means dark fountains must emit both forces. Inside of the dark fountains, we see image_death, meaning that it relates to the combination of hopes and dreams. Image_death appears in the background of the prophecy panels as well, so this means that the prophecy is also made of hopes and dreams. We also see image_death when we are about to leave the TV dark world. I believe this to be because the light is seeping in through the open door, and when both light and dark are present, image_death is created. Now that we know souls are made of hopes and dreams, let's look to real life. In real life, when light hits objects and enters our eyes, we see colour. I believe this means that the colour of a soul depends on the levels of hopes and dreams each person has. Humans having coloured souls means that they are made from both. Them having physical bodies is proof of dark determination, and their souls are proof of light determination. I believe that souls on the red side of the light spectrum have more hope than dreams, and that souls towards the purple side have more dreams. This is also why I believe the red soul represents hope, even though hope is white, because red is the soul with the most hope. However, by this logic, this should mean that the purple soul is the soul of dreams, right? Well, dreams isn't a virtue. Also, virtues are considered good, but darkness in Deltarune isn't without a little bit of hope. Undertale monsters have white souls, which means that they are made of mostly light determination, but they have just enough dark determination to be able to have a body that can be hit. Deltarune monsters have physical bodies, so that means they are made of more dark determination like humans. This means that their souls should also have colour. I don't know why monsters of Deltarune have physical bodies, whereas Undertale monsters don't, but the only explanation I can think of is that one theory where the monsters of Deltarune consuming physical food would make them more physical. I can't remember exactly which theory it is, but I will be taking it as a fact for this theory. Now, to explain my reasoning for why I believe we don't hear Sans' soul shatter in Undertale's genocide, even though I believe monsters from Deltarune have coloured souls. We know that Sans is secretly depressed from his lost soul fight, and I believe lost souls are the manifestation of a lightness hope, as we can't hit them because they're light. Sans is at rock bottom, so the levels of hope in his soul should be really low. He also doesn't seem to have dreams anymore, as the only dream he had was to get back to the Deltarune universe. However, he can't, so that dream will forever remain 1. His HP is 1, and that's the lowest amount of hope a lightner can possibly have. Because of this, I believe that his soul is extremely weak, so it shatters as soon as his body turns to dust, like an Undertale monster. In a phone call with Undyne, she says that she used to stay at Sans in Papyrus's, but Sans kept making hundreds of midnight snacks. I believe the reason Sans does this is because monster food is mostly made from light. Undertale monsters are mostly made of light, so they probably eat as much as a human does, but in monster food. But Sans has a physical body, and because he needs to consume physical matter, he has to eat tons of monster food just to get enough to maintain his body. Now, I'd like to talk about the Knight, the Roaring Knight. The Roaring Knight is very strange. It has the powers of pure darkness, but it's a light now. This shouldn't be possible, since the light of a soul keeps you safe from the dark, but I have an explanation for this. I call this process despairing. When a light now loses almost all of their hope inside of a dark world, they begin to cry, with shadow crystals forming from their tears. Once they've finished crying, they begin to smile. Their soul stops shining, and it begins to lose its shape. Without enough light inside them, their darkness is no longer kept in check. It consumes them. Their consciousness drifts into a dreamlike state, and they can no longer see the world with their own eyes. Then, they become a creature of darkness, just like the Roaring Knight. Also, smile.ogg is the sound of darkness, so I believe smiling is a metaphor for despairing. I believe that there's two ways to return a despaired person to normal. The first being to reach out to them, reminding them of their memories, which then restores their hope, allowing them to break free from the darkness. We know that this works with people not in a conscious state of mind, as this works for both lost souls and amalgamates. And the second being to unleash our light of hope and purify them. In the Chapter 5 Shawm dialogue, he refers to the shadow crystals as containing the power of will, but then he changes to a more fitting word, and the rest of the text is cut off before he can tell us. It's heavily implied that he's going to say determination, and as I went over before, I believe in which there are two types. I believe the shadow crystals to be like determination. Looking into one in the dark world shows you the light world, and exposing dark worlds to light causes you to see the light world. Light and hope are the same thing, so this makes perfect sense. Another thing about the Roaring Knight is that during its final attack, when it opens its chest, its sprite has a very weird name. Flourish. Flourish is a word often used in the context of growing plants, which seems random, but in the weird root, during the scene where Chris puts the thorn ring onto Noelle, we see a rose flourish. I believe that the Roaring Knight is under a similar type of control to Noelle in the weird root. But who is the one giving the Roaring Knight commands? I believe it to be Gasta. Also, the reason the Roaring Knight doesn't talk is because we wouldn't be able to understand it. Creatures of mostly darkness can only talk through phones. We know this because in Undertale, when we fight the memory heads, they speak in black boxes. It's only when we use our phone that we can say their words. There's a very specific reason for creatures of darkness to only be able to speak through phones that I will go over in part 3. Because of this, and the colour red being heavily linked with the Roaring Knight, I believe they were the red voice in the Roaring group chat phone call. Now, before I talk about Ralsei growing a soul, we need to go over the only other phenomenon that comes close. The ghosts fusing with bodies. In Undertale's genocide, when the mad dummy meets us, she is full of rage because of our terrible actions. Then she fuses with the dummy and says that it was that moment of unbridled emotion that allowed her to fuse with it. If this is possible, then surely it can work the other way around. Ralsei already has a body, but lacks a soul. Souls are made of hopes and dreams, which allows someone to control their own fate. He is already made up of hopes and dreams, but he is yet to make them his own. In part 1, I talked about the cardinal virtues, and how using them to defeat the darkness told me something very important about them. It tells me that in order to gain control of your dreams, you need to have mastered the cardinal virtues. However, that is only dreams. You still need to be able to master your hope. When fighting the Weather duo in Castletown's dojo, the flavor text for using Susie and Ralsei's actions are that Susie dreamed of sunny days, and Ralsei hoped for starry nights. We know Susie has hope, but as I mentioned in part 1, she hasn't yet mastered the cardinal virtues. Ralsei's is the opposite. He has mastered his cardinal virtues, but not his hope. In order to master hope, I believe you need to master the theological virtues: love, hope, and faith. Faith is the power to trust and stay committed to a positive outcome, despite changing feelings or doubts. Faith focuses on the past and present. Hope is the power to navigate uncertainty through positivity and work towards a good future. Hope focuses on the future. And love is the unchanging power to will and do good for others above your own ego, despite whether you disagree with a person's actions or not. Love focuses on the present. Ralsei has mastered his compassion/faith, but he still needs to master love and hope. Once he does, I believe all it will take is one moment of unbridled emotion with his hopes and his dreams burning black and white. Then, his soul will be born. And that's the end of part 2 of this theory. I'd like to thank you for watching. If you've watched all the way through, I really appreciate you listening to my ramblings. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this theory, it's that you should think of different virtues when analysing the behaviour of the characters of this series. From studying them, you can gain a greater understanding of the story Toby is trying to tell. I hope you have enjoyed the video. If you have, please like and hype the video, as well as commenting and subscribing. My channel is very small and it will help me reach a larger audience. That's all for this theory, and goodbye.